Have you ever wondered how the world plunged into the most devastating conflict in human history, World War II? Our tale begins in the ashes of the First World War, a period marked by economic instability and political turmoil. The Treaty of Versailles, intended to ensure peace, instead sowed the seeds of future conflict. Its punitive terms inflicted deep wounds on Germany's pride and economy, creating a fertile ground for discontent. Amid this tumultuous atmosphere, totalitarian regimes began to take hold. Charismatic leaders, fueled by ideologies of racial superiority and national expansion, rose to power. In Germany, Italy, and Japan, these leaders harnessed the public's dissatisfaction, steering their nations onto a path of aggression and expansion. Their ambitions, unchecked by a world still reeling from the Great War, set the stage for an even greater conflict. In this cauldron of discontent, the seeds of a new, far-reaching conflict were sown. The world stage saw the rise of charismatic yet dangerous leaders. Hitler in Germany, Mussolini in Italy, and Hirohito in Japan. Each with their own ideologies and ambitions, they all shared a common trait: a thirst for power and expansion. In Germany, Hitler was stoking the fires of nationalism, rebuilding his military in direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles. Meanwhile, Mussolini in Italy was dreaming of a new Roman Empire, initiating a series of conquests in Africa. Across the globe in Japan, Hirohito was overseeing an aggressive expansion into China and Southeast Asia, driven by a desire for resources and regional dominance. These three leaders, each fueled by their own unique blend of ambition, ideology, and nationalism, were setting their countries on a collision course with the rest of the world. Their actions, driven by a deadly combination of power and ambition, would soon ignite a global conflict. 1939 marks the year when tensions finally boil over. The world, still nursing the wounds of the Great War, finds itself on the precipice of another cataclysmic conflict. The spark that ignites the world into war is the invasion of Poland by Germany. This strategic move, executed with chilling precision, unveils a new era of warfare known as Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War. The world watches in horror as Poland succumbs to the might of the German war machine. However, this act of aggression does not go unanswered. Britain and France, bound by their mutual agreement to protect Poland, respond with declarations of war against Germany. Their decision signals the end of appeasement and the beginning of a united front against the rising tide of fascism. Thus, World War II had begun. As the war raged, Britain faced its darkest hour. The Blitz, a sustained bombing campaign against Britain by Nazi Germany, brought the war to the heart of London. Night after night, the city was lit by the fires of destruction. But the spirit of the British people remained unbroken. In the skies above, another battle was being fought. The Battle of Britain. This was a decisive air campaign waged primarily by the Royal Air Force against the Luftwaffe, Germany's air force. The stakes were high. If Britain fell, all of Europe would be under Hitler's control. The Battle of Britain was a test of courage, skill, and endurance. Despite being outnumbered, the Royal Air Force pilots defended their skies with tenacity and valor. Their efforts thwarted Germany's plans for air superiority, marking a significant turning point in the war. The resilience of the British people would become a beacon of hope. Meanwhile, the fires of war spread to the east. The stage was set for one of the largest and deadliest theaters of World War II, the Eastern Front. Hitler, in his ambition to create a vast German empire, launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. As summer of 1941 unfolded, over 3 million German soldiers marched eastwards, initiating the most extensive military campaign in history. Yet, the Soviet Union, under the leadership of Joseph Stalin, did not crumble as anticipated. The Red Army fought back with unyielding determination, despite suffering heavy losses. As winter set in, the German forces found themselves ill-prepared for the harsh conditions. The tides of war began to shift. The Battle of Stalingrad in particular marked a turning point. The German forces suffered a catastrophic defeat, and the myth of their invincibility was shattered. This marked a turning point in the war. Across the ocean, another theater of war was taking shape. It was a Sunday morning, December 7, 1941, when Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, forever etching this date into the annals of history. This audacious assault was the catalyst that plunged the United States into the maelstrom of war. The Pacific Theater was a cauldron of naval and aerial battles fought across a vast expanse of ocean and remote islands. The Battle of Midway, fought between the 4th and 7th of June 1942, was a decisive confrontation that turned the tide in the Allies' favor. The island-hopping campaigns that followed were instrumental in pushing back the Japanese forces, inch by inch, island by island, towards their homeland. The Pacific Theater was a testament to the resilience and tenacity of those who fought in the face of overwhelming odds. The war had truly become a global conflict. 1944, a year that would see the tide of war begin to turn. It's the early hours of June 6 D-Day, and the largest seaborne invasion in history is underway. Over 100,000 Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, France. It's a high-stakes gamble, a bid to break Hitler's iron grip on Europe. The invasion is brutal, the resistance fierce. But the Allies advance, inching their way up the beach, then beyond. Town by town, they liberate France from Nazi occupation. The success of D-Day marks a turning point, the beginning of the end for Nazi-occupied Europe. But the war is far from over. The Allies must now push on, advancing through a war-torn continent towards the heart of Hitler's Reich. Every liberated town, every freed city, brings them closer to their final goal. The liberation of Europe was within reach. But amidst the battles, humanity faced its darkest chapter. We now turn our attention to the Holocaust, a horrifying period where mankind witnessed the depths of its own inhumanity. In a chilling display of systematic genocide, the Nazis, under Adolf Hitler's regime, orchestrated the mass murder of 6 million Jews, along with millions of other minorities and political dissidents. These innocent victims were rounded up, stripped of their humanity, and subjected to unspeakable atrocities in concentration and extermination camps. The gas chambers of Auschwitz, the starvation at Bergen-Belsen, the forced labor at Dachau, each story, each life, echoes the chilling reality of this unfathomable horror. The world recoiled in shock as the truth came to light, the scale of the brutality beyond comprehension. The Holocaust serves as a stark reminder of the monstrous consequences of hate, prejudice, and ignorance. It was a grim reminder of the depths to which humanity could sink. As the war drew to a close, mankind witnessed a new, terrifying power. The decision to unleash this force was not taken lightly. The United States, after years of secret research under the Manhattan Project, had developed a weapon of unprecedented destruction, the atomic bomb. In August 1945, two of these bombs, named Little Boy and Fat Man, were dropped on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The impact was immediate and catastrophic, with tens of thousands of lives lost in an instant. The radiation fallout would claim many more in the months and years to come. Shocked by the devastation and faced with the prospect of further atomic attacks, Japan announced its surrender just days later. This marked the end of the Second World War, a conflict that had raged for 6 long years and claimed millions of lives. The war had ended, but at a terrible cost. In the ashes of the war, the world began to rebuild. Nations, scarred and battered, picked up the pieces. Drawn and redrawn, borders morphed, giving birth to new countries and altering others. The map of the world was reshaped, reflecting the seismic shifts brought on by this global conflict. In the heart of this rebirth, a beacon of hope emerged, the United Nations. Born out of the need for unity, the UN represented a collective resolve, a promise to uphold peace, to prevent the horrors of such a war from ever recurring. Yet, the specter of World War II did not vanish. It lingered, casting long shadows over the decades that followed. The war had irrevocably changed the world, its impact resonating in the corridors of power in economies, societies, and individual lives. World War II had ended, but its echoes still resonate today.